I can't believe you're actually doing this. Kira's voice carried a mix of disbelief and concern, her angular features illuminated by the soft glow of the alien city outside the window. Do you even remember what Earth smells like? What it feels like to walk on grass? The question hung in the air, heavy and intrusive. Marcus hesitated, his hand pausing mid-air as he reached for the sleek, metallic device on the table. The truth was, he didn't. The memories of Earth, of his life before the abduction, were like a fading dream. He could recall fragments, a blue sky, the laughter of a child, the sound of rain against a window pane, but they felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. Grass doesn't grow here, he finally replied, his tone neutral, almost detached. And the air, it smells fine. Kira's translucent eyes narrowed, her frustration evident. Fine? Is that all you have to say? You've been here so long you've forgotten what it means to feel human. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Marcus shot back, his voice sharper than intended. Have you seen what humans do to each other? Maybe losing that part of me is an improvement. The room fell silent, the tension thick. Kira's expression softened, but her gaze remained firm. You don't mean that, she said quietly. You're just confused. This place, these people, they've changed you. Marcus stood, his tall frame casting a shadow across the room. He turned to the window, looking out at the sprawling alien metropolis. The city pulsed with life, its inhabitants, tall, elegant beings with shimmering skin and elongated limbs, moving gracefully through the streets. He'd lived among them for years, learned their language, adopted their customs. They had welcomed him, treated him as one of their own. And yet, there was always a part of him that felt out of place, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong slot. They've given me a life, he said after a long pause. A purpose. Back on Earth, I was nobody. Here, I'm someone. Kira stepped closer, her voice soft but insistent. You were someone on Earth too. You just can't remember it. They've erased parts of you, Marcus. Replaced them with their own. But deep down, you're still human. And that's worth fighting for. Marcus turned to face her, his expression unreadable. And what if I don't want to fight? What if I'm happier this way? Kira's shoulders slumped, her resolve faltering. Happier? Or just numb? The question lingered, unspoken truths weaving between them like threads in a tapestry. Marcus didn't have an answer, not one he was ready to admit. Instead, he picked up the device from the table and turned it over in his hands. It was a small, unassuming thing, no larger than a deck of cards, but its significance was immeasurable. A gift from the Alien Council, a symbol of his acceptance into their society. This, he said, holding it up, is my future. Whatever I was before, it doesn't matter anymore. Kira's eyes glistened with unshed tears. It matters to me, she whispered, and it should matter to you. Marcus looked away, unable to meet her gaze. The weight of her words pressed against him, but he pushed it aside, burying it deep within the recesses of his mind. He had made his choice, or at least, he thought he had. The days that followed were a blur of routines and rituals. Marcus immersed himself in the alien culture, attending ceremonies, participating in communal tasks, and studying their history. The more he learned, the more he felt himself slipping away from his past. The human memories that once haunted him grew fainter, replaced by vivid images of alien landscapes and customs. But there were moments, fleeting and unbidden, when the past would resurface. A snippet of a song, a fragment of a dream, a flash of a face he couldn't quite place. They were like whispers in the dark, reminding him of a life he had tried to forget. One night, as he lay in his quarters, the whispers grew louder. He dreamt of Earth, of a young boy running through a field of wildflowers, his laughter echoing in the wind. The boy turned, and Marcus saw his own face staring back at him, eyes wide with wonder. He woke with a start, his heart pounding. The room was silent, the city outside bathed in the soft glow of its bioluminescent lights. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. The dream had felt so real, so vivid. It was as if his mind was trying to tell him something, to remind him of who he was. The next day, Marcus found himself wandering the city, his thoughts a tangled mess. He ended up at the archive, a vast repository of knowledge and artifacts from countless worlds. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he felt compelled to search. Hours passed as he sifted through shelves and displays, his frustration mounting. Just as he was about to give up, something caught his eye. A small, dusty box tucked away in a corner. He opened it, revealing a collection of Earth artifacts, a faded photograph, a tarnished wristwatch, a small globe. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He picked up the photograph, his hands trembling. It showed a family, a man, a woman, and a young boy. The boy's face was unmistakable. It was him. Tears blurred his vision as memories came flooding back, crashing over him like a tidal wave. He remembered his parents, his childhood, the life he had left behind. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He had forgotten them. He had forgotten himself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Marcus wrestled with his identity, torn between the life he had built among the aliens and the life he had lost on Earth. Kira's words echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the humanity he had nearly abandoned. In the end, he knew he had to make a choice: to embrace his alien life completely or to fight to reclaim his humanity. It wasn't an easy decision, and the path ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in years, Marcus felt a spark of hope, a reminder that no matter how far he had strayed, a part of him would always belong to Earth. Marcus stood at the precipice of his decision, the weight of it bearing down on him. The dusty box of Earth artifacts lay open on the archive table, its contents whispering of a past he could no longer deny. The photograph of his family rested in his hand, its edges worn and fragile, like the memories it had awakened. He turned it over, finding a note scrawled on the back in faded ink. "No matter where you go, you're always part of us. Love, Mom and Dad." His chest tightened. It wasn't just about him. It was about the people he had left behind, the lives intertwined with his own, and the promise of love that transcended time and space. But what could he do now? The Alien Council had given him a new identity, a new life. He was respected here, valued in ways he never had been on Earth. To leave this behind meant risking everything: his standing, his security, even his life. And yet, staying meant denying the truth of who he was. Kira found him in the archives that evening. She approached cautiously, her translucent eyes scanning his face. "You've been here all day," she said softly. "Did you find what you were looking for?" He held up the photograph in response, his expression a mixture of pain and resolve. "I found enough." Kira's gaze softened as she stepped closer. "You remember now, don't you?" Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "Pieces. Enough to know I can't stay like this, Kira. I can't keep pretending." Kira placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm despite her alien physiology. "Then what will you do?" He hesitated, the enormity of the decision pressing down on him. "I don't know. I don't even know if going back to Earth is possible. But I have to try. I have to remember who I was, who I am." Kira studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Then I'll help you." Marcus blinked, taken aback. "Why? You've been telling me how dangerous it is to go against the Council. Why would you risk it?" Kira smiled faintly. "Because you're right. You've changed, Marcus, but you're still human. And that part of you, that stubborn, defiant part, is worth fighting for. Besides," she added with a wry grin, "you're hopeless without me." "For the first time in what felt like years," Marcus laughed. It was a brief, rusty sound, but it was real. "You might regret saying that," he said. "Maybe," Kira replied, "but I've always been bad at regrets." The plan was reckless and fragile, relying on stolen moments and half-understood technology. Kira used her connections to access restricted areas of the archive, uncovering old records of Earth and the alien abduction program. They discovered a small transport vessel, long forgotten and tucked away in the city's underbelly. It was ancient, barely functional, but it had one crucial feature: the ability to travel between planets. As they worked to restore the vessel, Marcus found himself torn between hope and fear. The whispers of his past were clearer now, filling the empty spaces in his heart. But the closer he came to reclaiming his humanity, the more he questioned what he would find on Earth. What if too much time had passed? What if his family was gone, his home unrecognizable? What if he no longer belonged there? On the eve of their departure, Kira confronted him in the dim light of the vessel's cockpit. "You're scared," she said, not unkindly. Terrified, Marcus admitted. "I don't even know what I'm going back to." Kira tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe it's not about going back. Maybe it's about moving forward, about finding a way to bridge who you were with who you've become." Marcus considered her words, a flicker of understanding dawning within him. "You sound like you've done this before." She smiled enigmatically. "Let's just say I know what it's like to feel torn between two worlds." When the time came, the vessel roared to life, its engines sputtering but steady. As they broke through the planet's atmosphere, Marcus felt a surge of emotions: fear, hope, determination, coursing through him. The alien city shrank behind them, its bioluminescent glow fading into the darkness of space. For the first time in years, Marcus allowed himself to dream of Earth, not as a distant memory, but as a real, tangible place waiting for him. As the vessel hurtled toward its destination, Kira sat beside him, her presence a steadying force. "Whatever happens," she said, her voice firm, "you're not alone in this." Marcus glanced at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Kira, for everything." She shrugged, though her expression was warm. "Don't thank me yet. We've still got a long way to go." Marcus turned his gaze to the viewport, where the stars stretched out before them like a promise. For the first time in years, he felt like he was heading home, not just to a place, but to himself. And no matter what awaited him on Earth, he knew one thing for certain: he was ready to fight for it, for his past, his future, and the humanity he had almost lost.